Hello and welcome to the end of 2019 predicted and the beginning of 2020 Grand Astral conjunction. In the last video of the London attack predicted, I said that 12/12 was going to be another day of astral synchronization due to a full moon and several astrological alignments completing cycles of 2001 when the anti-terrorist war began, and just days later more alleged attacks were announced. One in American Navy bases where the alleged terrorists posed that the final countdown has begun on 9/11, the same date of the 2001 attacks, and a date I also anticipated. And in 9/11 this year, they announced they destroyed the main terrorist base and their leaders, and that he also watched shooting videos before attacking, giving the image that anyone investigating these events can be a future terrorist. And the other alleged attack was against a Jewish neighborhood, then declared a domestic terrorist act, reliving the anti-Semitic narrative that began in 2001 when independent investigations revealed that elements of Israel could be involved in the attacks. In addition, the first attack was 7 days after London and the next one 11 days later, in sync with the occult numerology that comes from Jewish magic, and that in the last videos I showed how the rulers used to synchronize events. And all this culminated in the militarization of the zones, and in 12/12, when the British Prime Minister who described the London incident as terrorism won the elections, who is also called the British Trump, and Trump, the President of the United States, announced a law against anti-Semitism that advanced global censorship. I also marked that 12/12 was the 6666 or 212 day from the fall of the Twin Towers, and next to 999 days of the millionaire creator of the towers, who was one of the main promoters of world government, and according to informants, his family was involved in the attacks. And as we see, all the narrative of that moment returned with this astral synchronization that will explode with the 2020 Great Conjunction. I also said that this astral synchronization gate was going to be from 12/12 to 21/12, bringing the narrative of the final hour or end of time. And in 12/12 full moon was completed a synchronization that began in September, just when God completed 2 years of the astral signal of the woman of the apocalypse in proximity to the Jewish Judgment Day, when the historic Trump trial began, right after he had a famous crossing with the young Rita who preached the climate apocalypse at the UN. I also anticipated those events with precise dates, and they were fulfilled, followed by a new wave of social chaos around the world. But I also showed how these characters had already been programmed in numerous films, in many movies, in which a man with hate attacks a young rebel unleashing chaos. And sure enough, on 12/12, Trump and Greta reached a peak when she was named Person of the Year and said that politicians must be put against the wall being something that made Trump famous, and he told her to take a vacation, after which she did. Immediately, the news accused Trump of bullying her, exactly like the narrative I showed on many movies. And now chaos had unleashed again, as we will see. But the biggest secret of this astral synchronization is that the full moon of 12/12 made a practically exact conjunction with several of the most important planets in the astrological birth chart of Trump and Greta, which are almost opposite from each other, which will reach a climax with the Great Conjunction of 2020, because it will superactivate their natal planets. Then on the 18th, the first stage of Trump trial was completed exactly on the date that I had anticipated, because was taking place an astrological alignment representing the triumph of the king after death and resurrection, and due to the trial of that exact day, Trump's popularity went up, resurrecting his campaign. But they also announced the trial next stage will be on January 6, 2020, exactly when the first impact of the Great Conjunction between Saturn and Pluto occurs in the same degree. I have been anticipating this narrative against Trump since the beginning of the year, because astrologers found that the Great Conjunction of 2020 makes direct opposition to his birth planet, as happened in the 90s, when he almost lost everything. In addition, the 6th is the day of the astrologer, and the day of the wise men who followed the stars to find the birth of Jesus, who in the myth were astrologers and are represented by the 3 stars that followed the rebirth of the sun, or the astral king, in the south of the Milky Way, opposite to the conjunction. Finally, in 21/12, this astral synchronization door was closed with the news of the young activist returning to her place of origin, where she first protested and with Trump announcing the official launch of the new military branch Space Force, which from the day they both crossed famously on the UN is exactly 2,112 hours, just exactly like the date. But it is also 88 days, a mystical number that many people have discovered is used a lot by Trump because it's coded mainly in his name, but also in his books, offices, fundraising, and other events. Even the 8/8 of this year, he raised the full flag after announcing pre-crime due to several shootings, and this was a date I also anticipated. In fact, he has admitted to study Jewish magic that involves numerical and symbolic astrological synchronizations. For example, in August I made a video announcing an upcoming astral synchronization with Trump's because in the following days there was going to be an alignment with his king star. In exactly the day after I made the prediction, Trump shouted to the sky, "I am the chosen one." The same day of the great American eclipse that happened when he became president, which made conjunction with his king star. And from 1212 to 2112 there are 777,000 seconds, the number of his famous 777 prophecy on the day of his assumption, confirming the astral synchronization. Finally, in the last video I also indicated that the eclipse of 26 was going to be another example of what the Great Conjunction is bringing, because it completed the cycle started with the eclipse of the middle of the year that passed through Chile, where chaos soon broke out, and after a similar alignment on 11/11 over Bolivia, the country was left without president, a date that I also anticipated. This time the eclipse of 26 passed over India and the country protests reached a limit with deaths and the government starting internet shutdowns and threats of confiscating people's property, and crossed Australia, where fires led thousands to escape to the beaches and cancel the end of the year celebration. I also said that this eclipse would mark a cycle of synchronization between Argentina and United States, reliving the 2001 narrative after the last Great Conjunction before that year. In the video I made anticipating the Great Argentinian Eclipse of mid-2019, I said exactly that it would bring a new beginning with unexpected changes in the Argentinian elections, with a change of a male figure that could be obscured since the sun represents the Father King figure, and exactly on the day of the following votes, on Father's Day, there was an historic power shutdown that left all of Argentina and nearby countries without power, a failure of the electrical system that the government never explained but happened on the 7th day of the week, on the 16th, which is 7, and supposedly started exactly at 7:07 a.m. giving all the signs that it was a ritual of astral synchronization. And the elections ended with the president of the moment losing to the formula, starring the same former president who reached power after 2001. I said exactly the eclipse will signal a direct opposition between the sign of home, motherhood, and motherland against the planets of power and transformation in the signs of security and authority. And shortly after, in Argentina was historically rejected the abortion law by the will of the people against the imposition of the government. But I anticipated the new family cycle marked by the eclipse will have effects until the Christmas eclipse at the end of the year, when it was going to be completed by turning all upside down with a 180-degree reversal and bringing a government change where the old authority would leave and would come new powers with unexpected shifts in the protection of traditional values against the imposition of destructive laws. And sure enough, the old government called right-wing made room for a new one, left-wing, finishing the imposition of abortion and doing the previous democratic rejection. I also added that the final eclipse of 2019, due to an angle of alliance with Uranus, the planet of revolution, in the sign of the values, was going to indicate economic surprises related to the government, which by the lunisolar cycles was going to repeat events just before the famous crisis of 2001, but with a twist. In those years, the Senate came into focus for a bribery scandal, followed by the emergency change of president, who ended up on trial. And now the Senate comes into focus again due to a salary freeze because of economic emergency. At the same time, it's reopened the trial of the ex-president of 2 decades ago that have returned into power, like Trump. Finally, I said that this eclipse due to the crossing of the roads will bring a synchronization with the United States that will also bring back the narrative marked by the Great Conjunction before 2001, and precisely the Trump trial is reviving the trial of the former US president of those moments. And I said the peak of this year's repetition was going to be around 28 when Saturn and Pluto reach only 1 degree of distance, almost about to make conjunction, recharging the anti-terrorist narrative started in 2001, but with the influence of Jupiter, the star that expands everything in the north of the Milky Way, called the Gate of God. And sure enough, we end the year with the following news of alleged religious attacks around the world. Islamic terrorists beheaded Christians because of the United States murdered their leaders. Then a car bomb caused a massacre in Africa. USA bombed 5 Islamic bases in the Middle East after a civilian was killed with a rocket launcher, and thousands invaded the American embassy, after which Trump promised revenge. There is a new shooting in an American church and a stabbing in the house of a Jewish rabbi celebrating a religious holiday that Trump specially clarified occurred on the 7th day of the celebration, where 7 candles are lit, declared a terrorist act. All this culminated in militarization of Jewish areas, the origin of a special government agency to protect them especially, and Trump with Russia promoting that pre-crime has already stopped new alleged future attacks on the new year, crowning the 2001 reversal. All this peaked a day before the end of the year when Trump turned 26862 days, which can be reduced to 888, and this day marks 18 years and 110 days since the 9/11 attack, which can be reduced to 9 and 11, and 2112 Israel turned 71 years, 7 months and 7 days, 7177. 5 days later the eclipse passed, and 5 more days later is the end of the year when it turns 71 years, 7 months, 17 days, 71717. The eclipse was in the middle of a pair of 5 days, and 55 is the code of the return of Saturn, which is a big part of the cult of Israel because this planet governs the structure of time. Do you see the astral magic? Do you think all this is a coincidence? I do not. We can clearly see the astral synchronization from 2001 to 2020. In 2001, just after a great conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, they opposed Pluto, and the attack on the towers happened in 9/11. The anti-terrorist war began, and the president of the moment declared himself against the conspiracy theories, saying Israel was involved, supported by thousands of architects. At that time, Saturn and Jupiter, one the planet of death and the other of religion, which in ancient times was symbolized by an eagle, the main symbol of America. Both were in the south of the Milky Way, the sign of the twins, which symbol looks like 2 pillars like the Twin Towers, both against Pluto, the planet of destruction by fire, in the sign of big travels, which symbol looks like an airplane, exactly like the one that supposedly collided with the tower. Now in 2019, when the planets went all the way to the north of the Milky Way and almost made conjunction in the first months just before going back, the fire of Notre Dame happened, which according to the government was an accident, but was supposedly flagged by YouTube as a conspiracy theory of the 2001 attacks. Also, the former chief architect of the cathedral suspected that the fire was intentional, just like the architects for 9/11 truth. And then the terrorist narrative came back, culminating with Israel in the spotlight again, shortly after Trump announces pre-crime to stop alleged future terrorists before attack, who is famously called the king of conspiracy theory, because during the campaign he questioned the official version of the 2001 attacks, because most people don't believe the official story anymore, and for having won the presidency on 11/9, that is an inverted 9/11, illustrated by the famous documentaries questioning the attacks of 2001, making a complete reversal of that moment, like the astrological alignment of the Great Conjunction. At the moment of the church burning, the destruction by fire of Pluto was repeated, the death of Saturn in the following bombing of churches, and the symbolism of Jupiter, which not only represents religion, but was the ancient god of lightning. And the same day of the fire, numerous lightning strikes fell on the building that replaced the Twin Towers, recorded by someone with the same name of the former mayor of 2001. All this is a big sample of 2020, when the 3 planets through the entire year will make conjunction 5 times until the end of the year, completing the great astral synchronization. And it is important to remember that, as I explained in previous videos, the same American army the classified documents where they admitted past projects to carry out false attacks with fake witness and false victims to blame it on the enemy and justify armed interventions. In addition to the fact that the rulers of before and now are involved with the occult societies rooted in astrological-based rituals, psycho-emotional manipulation. In fact, one of the last colonels in charge of psychological operations is one of the founders of modern occultism, admitting in books plans to use the media to program the population. Even occultist Masonic heads for at least a decade had the plan to become known as a reliable institution long after the organization had always hid their knowledge from the population, but instead always share it with the rulers to give them an advantage over their own population. This plan has the same name of the new publication of the famous predictive magazine called 2020 Vision. So if 2001 was the Space Odyssey, 2020 will be the Astral Odyssey. And now the great synchronization begins, where you will see that the great conjunction is a door that your spirit has already crossed and is sending you information so that you wake up and can say, I am Astral. Alright, thanks for watching. I end with a picture of the most important dates of the Great Conjunction of 2020, which I will soon explain. And if you want to know how it will affect your sign, you can see the 2020 Astral Horoscope and the large list explaining in detail the great historical cycles closed by the Grand Conjunction. So as you can see, during 2019 I gave exact dates and detailed symbolic synchronizations, which I later explained with examples how they get reflected in the great theater of the world. But I do not claim that I see the future or that I am an enlightened prophet. I am simply showing that to understand this language is to understand the script of the fiction and the tricks of the magician behind the curtain, so that others can see beyond the illusion. But this is really something that anyone can do, knowing the basics. With this, you are prepared for the great synchronization. And I wish you a very happy Grand Conjunction of 2020 Astral!